So have you ever gone through a period of just low energy, aches and pains, where your pop disappeared, tricks disappeared, consistency went down, and you were just like, what is going on? When is this going to end? Why is this happening? Well, I hear skaters talk about this all the time, and I've personally just gone through the exact same situation. So in this video, I'm just going to go over one of the main causes as to why all of this happens, along with an actionable plan that you can start using to help yourself get out of this period as well. And this is exactly what I've personally just used myself to get back to where I am now, mate. Killing the game, some would say. Slaying it. Obliterating the game. Okay, maybe not that good, but like, we've got back to where I'm feeling good again. So this year I've been out in the streets filming a lot, working on a new part, and when I'm out filming, the sessions can end up super intense because I'll just keep going for hours and hours and hours until I get the trick, or until I pretty much just like can't physically skate anymore. So the sessions end up super intense, and these kind of long, intense sessions are an unavoidable part of skating, and especially if you're out in the streets like battling tricks. And I'm not gonna lie, like I do love a good battle every now and then, especially if you end up getting the trick, it's definitely worth it. But like of everything, there's a line, and I'd just been traveling for about 9 months where I'd been doing a lot of chilling. I'd been working out much less than I used to, and my skate sessions were at a much lower intensity than what they used to be. So my body was just de-adapted to skating, and it just wasn't as resilient as it used to be. So jumping straight back into these regular, intense 4-hour filming battles was just way above what my body was currently adapted to handle and recover from. So a couple of months ago, I noticed that I just started to skate and feel progressively worse. I was losing all the tricks that I've usually got on lock. My energy levels were just dropping massively, and I was getting all these aches and pains in my hip that I used to get back in the day. And I was thinking, is this the end of my prolific skate career? So if you've been through something similar, maybe because you've been injured, or you just had a period of low intensity sessions, or you just want to increase your resilience to skating, just become better adapted to be able to handle more skating, then this is going to be for you. So based on what you expose your body to through things like the lengths of your sessions, the intensity of your sessions, the kinds of skating that you do, so if you skate like bigger gaps and more heavy impact spots, your body's going to adapt to better handle those things. So next time round, in the next sessions, they cause less damage and fatigue. It's basically where your body just kind of like protecting itself and becoming more resilient to the things that you do on a regular basis. So let's call that level of resilience your adapted range. Now, as long as most of your sessions are pretty much around that adapted range and you're recovering as you normally would, then everything's gonna be fine, mate. You're gonna be skating as you normally would, you're gonna be feeling as you normally would, it's all gonna be gravy. On the other hand, if you're going for these super intense sessions that are peaking you like way out of that adapted range, they're a much higher intensity than what your body's currently adapted to handle, then they're going to create a lot more fatigue and a lot more damage, which is going to require a lot more recovery time as well. So let's break it down on this obnoxiously large whiteboard, okay? So here we are, one man, one graph. This is the fatigue, adaptation, time continuum. We've got adaptation here, fatigue here, time this way. So this line is that adaptation range I was just speaking about. It's how resilient your body currently is, how much skating and the kinds of skating it's currently adapted to handle. And these dots right here are your sessions. So this session over here, there's a pretty chilled one, pretty moderate session. You know, it's way below what our body can currently handle, so it didn't really stress the body too much, and it didn't generate a lot of fatigue, so we can bounce back pretty fast back up to baseline from that one. By the time we go to our next session, we're fully recovered, we can blast it. This session right here was pretty close to the limit. We were definitely pushing it on this one, stressing our body pretty hard, but it was still within what we usually expose our bodies to. So yes, it did create more damage and fatigue, but it wasn't like an excessive amount, so we could bounce back still pretty fast. By the time we go for our next session, all was good. But this session, mate, this was a throttler. This was a colossal session. Fucking hell. You really pushed yourself like so much harder than how you normally skate on that session, and that was way above like what your body was currently adapted to handle. So that's going to create a shit ton of fatigue, and it's going to take a long time to actually recover back up to baseline. Alright, quick side note, going back to my travelling mission, you remember I was 9 months of just much lower intensity. When I got back, I was much less prepared to skate. My body was nowhere near as resilient as it used to be. So my adaptation range was maybe it was down here, you know? A session like this, which is like a pretty chill session when I was this adapted, wouldn't have caused much fatigue at all. But because I was much less resilient now, it's going to create much more damage and fatigue, and it's going to take longer for me to actually like bounce back from that. This session, which was like pretty intense at the time, but still within what I was adapted to handle when I was up here, created fatigue, but I bounced back fast. But with this lower adaptation range, it peaked me like way above what my body was adapted to handle, so it created much more damage and fatigue than it would if I was adapted to that level. So this one would bring me like way down here. And this one up here, mate, fucking hell, I don't think I would have even like walked after that session, or to be fair, I probably would have got injured before I would have even been able to reach that intensity. So that just shows that the intensity of a session is completely relative to like you personally and how you're currently adapted at that moment in time. Okay, so back to this heavy mission that created a shitload of fatigue and that's gonna take a long time to recover from. So for me to fully recover from that mission, I'm either gonna have to take time off from skating, or I'm gonna have to lower the intensity of my sessions to let myself recover. But, you know, as a skater, I'm just not gonna do that. I'm not gonna take days off from skating or lower the intensities of my sessions. Nah, I'm not some kind of flapper, right? I'm not gonna do that. So I'm gonna go for another heavy session, and let's say this is another one of my 4-hour filming battles, all right? So before I fully recovered, we go for another absolute hefty one. And it's important to mention as well, like this adaptation range is gonna be fluctuating based on how much fatigue you've got. So the more fatigue you're carrying, this is actually gonna like go down, and your body's not gonna be able to handle as much stress as it normally would if you were absolutely fresh, carrying no damage and fatigue. So, alright, I go for another 4-hour hefty colossal session before I'm fully recovered. I'm gonna now accumulate a shitload more fatigue. That's gonna take me deeper down into the fatigue dungeon. And as we go deeper and deeper into that realm of just like a shitload of fatigue, that's when we're gonna start noticing all those different symptoms like low energy, losing our tricks, losing consistency, maybe not popping as high as we want, not having the power to skate how we normally skate. And then it's just going to become this vicious cycle, because when you're this fatigued, you're just not going to be able to skate at a high level. But for you to maintain this adaptation range, you need to be constantly taking your body close to like its limits of what it's currently adapted to handle, either through like the intensity of your sessions, like the length of your sessions, or the kinds of skating that you do. But obviously because you're so fatigued, you can't do it, so you're going to have to go for a lower intensity session, and then maybe again another lower intensity session. And because it's just way below your adapted range, this line is going to start going down. You're going to become less resilient to skating, but then you're probably going to be like, shit, I'm losing my skating, I'm losing all my tricks, I need to like push harder and skate more. But in reality, that's just going to accumulate more fatigue, and it's probably the opposite of what you need to do. So we're going to get to what you need to do. There are techniques and methods to get out of this fatigue dungeon, to avoid going there in the first place, and then to basically get that adaptation range back up. So let's get to the plan. This is what I've personally just used to break out of this shitty cycle and get that adaptation range back up, mate. So let's get to it. Alright, so we're back with two absolute phenomenal specimens of graphs right here. So on paper, the plan's pretty simple. You've pretty much just got to raise that adaptation range so you're resilient enough to handle the type of skating that you want to do. So using the timeline that I went through on this graph, you can see that back in January 2021, before I went on my trip, and I was still skating normally, skating as I used to skate, I was adapted well to skating. But after that 9-month trip, my body heavily de-adapted. I wasn't as resilient as I used to be, so that level came down. And here in January 2022 was when I started to basically go for all of those like heavy filming missions, and I started to skate shit, feel all those aches and pains and low energy levels and that, which is when I was like, alright, thumbing needs to happen. So this was around about middle of February where the plan started, and now we'll head on to this bad boy graph over here. So yeah, mate, nice graph, right? I'm actually kind of proud of this graph, even though like I'm sure there's like many better ways of presenting this information, but I never claimed to be the graph man, alright? So the plan was pretty much split up into two phases, the restore phase and the rebuild phase. So the restore phase was all about just getting my body back to baseline, getting rid of all of that excessive fatigue before we could then like start rebuilding. So for this phase, I had in my head like 2 weeks of time. Now, the first 3 days was just like absolutely nothing because my body was completely destroyed from the last session. So literally just no skating, no working out at all. Some like chilled walks around the city, a little bit of window shopping. And then after those 3 days when I felt like my energy had come back and I wasn't just hurting so much, that's when I started to like skate again and work out again, but at a real low intensity. So literally just skated flat. The workouts were more like mobility, stability focused, and I really just made sure that these sessions like really didn't accumulate pretty much any fatigue at all. So once I got back up to this point, I wasn't just gonna like jump back in full power, start blasting the heaviest filming missions that I'd ever been on. Nah. We'd got back to baseline, but we still had to rebuild back up to where we used to be. So the whole rebuild phase probably took around about 2 months back to get almost where I used to be at. And to get back to there, it was pretty much all about just like gradually increasing the intensity of the skates, gradually like longer sessions, heavier sessions, and progressively increasing the intensity of my workouts as well. And I've been doing the MBD Elite program pretty much through this whole phase, which I'll put links for down below. But regardless of if you want to like get back out of like a heavily fatigued state, or if you just want to become more resilient to skating, the key is always just like gradual progression over time. So pushing yourself enough so your body adapts, but not so much that you've got to take time off from skating or lower the intensities of your sessions. So when you're going through this process, you really need to have like a few measures of how your body's responding, especially if you're pushing yourself to adapt or if you're trying to get out of like a heavily fatigued state. So that can be as simple as just, how does your body feel? Do you wake up like super destroyed from the last session, from your last workout, or do you feel pretty fresh, mate? Do you feel like you could push yourself a little more today? And then combining that with things like, how are you skating? Are you starting to get your tricks back? Are you starting to feel more consistent? Is your energy coming back? And then as well, you can use things like how you're sleeping, how your mood is, to let you know whether or not you're pushing yourself too far. And if you want to get extra tech, you can use something called heart rate variability as well, which I actually used through the whole of this process, and you could really see like the period of fatigue, and then when I started to like gradually increase my resilience and get fitter and fitter. The final thing I want to say on this as well is, this is going to be a hard process, it's going to be a long process, and it's going to suck because you're going to have to accept that you're not going to be skating at the level that you want as you go through this process, especially in that initial restoration period. But my friend, you're working towards it, and now you've got a plan to help you get where you want to go. You just got to think that like you're playing the long game, and I know that's hard to do, and I know it sucks to not be able to skate at the level you want, not be able to do the tricks you used to be able to do at the consistency level that you used to be able to do them at. And there are going to be times when you're going to want to like fuck the plan and just push, go hard and like have a heavy session, but it's definitely going to be in your best interest if you're working out of that like heavy period of fatigue to try and control yourself in some way and accept that your body isn't ready for that right now, but you're working towards it. You've got the plan, you've got the power, and you can definitely get to where you want to go. So hopefully that will help some people that have been in the same situation. If you've been in that situation, you've made it out, drop comments down below, let us know how you did it. And make sure you subscribe for regular content that's going to improve how you skate and how you feel when you skate. If you want to as well, download the ebook called The Essentials of Skateboarding Progression. I'm going to put a link down in the description below. Completely free, mate. Not a penny, not a peseta, not a tuppence. So if you want to get that, link down in the description below, and thanks if you made it this far.